Before we begin, take a breath. Feel the air moving in and out. You are not your thoughts, not your past, not even the story that brought you here. If this moment feels quiet, that is not emptiness. It is space. And in that space, you begin to wake up. If you wish to explore this depth of awareness, to live from stillness rather than from noise, subscribe, and let us journey into the now together. There is a trembling that lives beneath the surface of your days. You have felt it, haven't you? A subtle vibration, like the hum of electricity through wires you cannot see. It rises in the morning before thought is fully formed, before the mind has assembled its familiar architecture of worry and plan. It whispers through your chest when you are alone, when the distractions fall away and something unnamed moves through the silence. You have called anxiety. You have named it fear. You have tried to solve it, to fix it, to make it go away. But what if I told you that this trembling is not a problem to be solved? What if this discomfort, this restlessness, this sense that something is not quite right, what if it is not a symptom of your brokenness, but the first stirring of your awakening? The mind does not like this possibility. The mind prefers problems it can name, enemies it can fight, solutions it can pursue. The mind wants to know what is wrong, so it can make it right. And so it labels this feeling, packages it neatly into categories of disorder and dysfunction. It says, you are anxious, you are depressed, you are not coping well. It sends you searching for answers in books and therapies and substances that promise relief. And there is nothing wrong with seeking help, nothing wrong with care and compassion for your suffering. But beneath all of this, beneath the labels and solutions, there is something else happening, something the mind cannot quite grasp because it is the very thing that is watching the mind. You are waking up, not in the way you wake from sleep each morning, dragging consciousness back into the familiar prison of identity and time. No, this is a different kind of awakening. This is a stirring of awareness itself, the recognition that you are not the voice in your head, not the story you've been telling yourself, not the accumulated past that you carry like a weight upon your shoulders. This awakening does not announce itself with trumpets and revelations. It comes quietly, almost imperceptibly, as a sense of displacement, a feeling that the world you have known is somehow less solid than it once appeared. The roles you have played, the beliefs you have held, the very sense of who you are, all of it begins to feel like a costume you've been wearing for so long that you forgot it was not your skin. And this is why it feels like anxiety. Because the ego, that constructed sense of self, feels its ground shifting. It feels the dissolution beginning, and it interprets this as danger. The ego is nothing more than a pattern of thought, a collection of memories and judgments and identifications that have crystallized into the feeling of being a separate self, of someone who is here in this body, moving through time, trying to survive and succeed and be recognized. The ego is not evil. It is not your enemy. It is simply a function that arose to help you navigate the world of form, the world of objects and others in time. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that it was just a function. You began to believe that this voice, this narrator, this constant commentator on your experience. You began to believe that this was you. And now, as awareness begins to stir, as consciousness starts to recognize itself, the ego feels threatened. It does what it has always done. It creates fear. It says, something is wrong. It says, you are in danger. It says, you must fix this, control this, understand this. And so the mind spins faster, generating more thoughts, more analysis, more stories about what is happening and what it means and what you should do about it. The anxiety intensifies. The restlessness grows. And you believe that you are falling apart, when in truth, you are falling together. You are falling into the wholeness that you have always been, but could not see because you were looking through the lens of separation. Listen, can you hear it? Beneath the noise of thought, beneath the churning of the mind, there is a silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. It is always there, like the canvas beneath a painting, like the space in which all sound arises and dissolves. This silence is not empty. It is full, infinitely full, with a quality that cannot be named but can be felt. When you touch this silence, even for a moment, something in you relaxes. The grip of the mind loosens. The urgency fades. And in that space, you remember something you have always known but have forgotten. You are not the noise. You are the silence. You are not the wave. You are the ocean. But the mind does not want you to rest in this silence. The mind is afraid of silence because in silence, the mind dissolves. And so it pulls you back again and again into thought, into story, into the drama of becoming and achieving and protecting. It tells you that presence is not enough, that stillness is laziness, that acceptance is defeat. It tells you that you must do more, be more, figure out, make it happen. And you believe it because you have been conditioned to believe it. You have been taught that your value lies in your productivity, your worth in your achievements, your identity in your roles and relationships and possessions. You have been taught that you are a separate self in a world of other separate selves, competing for resources and recognition and love. But this teaching, this conditioning, is the source of your suffering, not because it is evil or wrong, but because it is not true. You are not separate. You have never been separate. Separation is an illusion created by thought, by the mind's need to divide and categorize and control. In reality, there is only one consciousness, one awareness, expressing itself through infinite forms. You are that consciousness, not you as the person, the personality, the story, but you as the awareness in which the person appears, you as the space in which all experience arises, you as the presence that is here, now, always, regardless of what is happening in the world of form. This is not a concept to be understood intellectually. The mind cannot grasp it because the mind is part of what is being observed. This is a recognition that happens in a dimension beyond thought, in the direct experience of being. It is like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. You cannot make it happen through effort or analysis. You can only allow it to reveal itself by becoming still, by withdrawing attention from the content of consciousness and resting as consciousness itself. And this is where the trembling comes in. This is where the anxiety serves its purpose. Because the discomfort you feel is not random. It is not a malfunction. It is the friction between two states of being. The state of identification with thought, with ego, with the separate self, and the state of resting as awareness, as presence, as the unified field of consciousness. You are standing at the threshold between these two states, and the ego is resisting with everything it has. It is generating fear and doubt and confusion because it knows, on some level, that if you cross this threshold, it will no longer be in control. It will no longer be the center of your experience. And to the ego, this feels like death. But it is not death. It is liberation. It is the end of suffering, not because your circumstances change, but because your relationship to your circumstances changes. When you are identified with the ego, with the mind, with the story of me and my life, then everything that happens is personal. Every challenge is a threat. Every loss is a tragedy. Every moment that does not conform to your expectations is a problem to be solved. You are constantly at war with reality, constantly trying to make things different than they are, constantly seeking the next moment when you will finally be okay, finally be complete, finally be at peace. But when you awaken to your true nature, when you recognize yourself as awareness rather than as the content of awareness, then the war ends. Not because you have won, but because you realize there was never anything to fight. Reality is as it is. This moment is as it is. And you as awareness are not threatened by what is. You are the space in which what is appears. You are the light by which what is known. And in that recognition, there is a peace that does not depend on circumstances, a joy that does not require reasons, a love that is not conditional on anything outside of itself. This is what you are moving toward. This is what the trembling is preparing you for. But the mind does not understand this. The mind only knows how to move forward through effort and strategy and control. And so it tries to turn awakening into a project, a goal to be achieved, a state to be attained. It says, I will meditate more, I will read more books, I will practice more techniques, and then I will be enlightened. But this is just another form of seeking, another way the ego tries to maintain itself by making awakening into something that will happen in the future, something that requires a better, more spiritual version of you. The truth is simpler and more immediate than that. You do not need to become anything other than what you already are. You do not need to improve yourself or fix yourself or transcend yourself. You only need to see through the illusion of the separate self, to recognize that the one who is seeking is itself a thought, a construct, a pattern of energy that has no independent existence. When this is seen, not as an idea but as a living reality, then the seeking stops, not because you have found what you were looking for, but because you realize that what you were looking for was never lost. You are already that which you seek. You have always been that which you seek. The presence, the awareness, the consciousness that you long for, it is what you are right now, in this moment, reading these words or hearing these words, or simply being here, alive, aware. Can you feel it? Not as a thought, but as a sensation, a quality of being. There's an aliveness here, isn't there? A sense of existence that is prior to all content, prior to all experience. Before the thought arises, there is awareness of the thought. Before the emotion moves through you, there is awareness of the emotion. Before the sensation appears in the body, there is awareness of the sensation. This awareness is not something you do. It is what you are. It is the ground of your being, the source from which all experience emerges, into which all experience returns. And yet, the mind will say, but I don't feel it. I don't feel this peace, this presence, this awareness you speak of. I only feel anxiety and confusion, and the weight of my problems. And this is where compassion is needed, because the mind is right in a way. When you are identified with thought, when you're lost in the story of the separate self, then that is your experience. The anxiety is real. The suffering is real, not because it is ultimately true, but because your attention is completely absorbed in it. It is like watching a movie and becoming so engrossed in the story that you forget you're sitting in a theater. Forget that the images on the screen are not reality, but projections of light and shadow. The invitation is not to deny your experience, not pretend that the anxiety is not there, not to bypass your pain with spiritual concepts. The invitation is to become curious about the one who is experiencing the anxiety. Who is it that feels anxious? Who is it that is suffering? If you look closely, if you bring gentle attention to this question, you will find something interesting. You will find that there is the anxiety, the sensation in the body, the thoughts in the mind, and there is the awareness of the anxiety. These are not the same thing. The anxiety comes and goes. It rises and falls. It has a beginning and an end. But the awareness of the anxiety is constant. It is always here, always present, always witnessing whatever is arising in the field of experience. This awareness is not affected by what it witnesses. It is like the sky, which is not affected by the weather that moves through it. Clouds come and go, storms arise and pass, but the sky remains unchanged, vast and open and free. You are that sky, not the person you think you are, not the story you tell about yourself, but the awareness in which the person and the story appear. And when you recognize this, when you rest as this, then the anxiety does not disappear, but your relationship to it transforms. It is no longer happening to you. It is simply happening, arising in the space of awareness, moving to like a wave on the ocean, and you are the ocean, not the wave. This is a shift that changes everything, not a shift in circumstances, not a shift in what is happening, but a shift in where you are standing in relation to what is happening. Instead of being inside the experience, identified with it, lost in it, you are the space in which the experience is occurring. And from this space, there is a natural compassion, a natural acceptance, a natural allowing of what is. Because you are no longer trying to protect a separate self that feels threatened by life. You are life itself, expressing through this particular form, this particular body-mind, this particular constellation of thoughts and feelings and sensations. But how do you make this shift? How do you move from identification to awareness? The mind wants a method, a technique, a series of steps to follow. And there are practices that can support this recognition: meditation, inquiry, presence exercises. But ultimately, the shift is not something you do. It is something you allow. It is a relaxation, a letting go, a surrender of the effort to be someone, to maintain the story, to control the experience. It is a falling back into what you already are, a remembering of the awareness that has been here all along, quietly witnessing the drama of your life. And this is where the paradox lives. You cannot make yourself awaken. The very effort to awaken is the ego trying to survive by becoming a spiritual ego, an enlightened ego, a better version of itself. But you can become aware of the effort. You can notice the seeking, the striving, the constant movement toward a future moment when you will finally be okay. And in that noticing, in that simple act of awareness, something shifts. Because the noticing is not the ego. The noticing is awareness itself, recognizing its own activity. So the practice, if we can call it that, is simply to notice. Notice the thoughts as they arise. Notice the emotions as they move through. Notice the sensations in the body. Notice the stories the mind tells about what is happening and what it means and what you should do about it. And as you notice, as you bring this gentle attention to your experience, you begin to realize that you are not what you are noticing. You are the noticing itself. You are the awareness that is always here, always present, always witnessing the flow of experience without being caught in it. This is not a state you achieve and then maintain forever. Awakening is not a destination. It is a deepening, a continuous recognition that happens again and again, moment by moment. You will forget. You will get lost in thought, lost in story, lost in the drama of the separate self. This is natural. This is part of the process. The mind is a powerful force, conditioned over many years to believe in its own reality, to believe in the story of me and my life. It will pull you back, again and again, into identification. But each time you notice, each time you recognize that you have been lost in thought, you are awakening, not in some future moment, but right now, in the very act of noticing. And with each recognition, the identification loosens. The grip of the ego softens. The sense of being a separate self becomes less solid, less convincing, less real. You begin to see it for what it is, a thought, a pattern, a habit of mind that has been running for so long that it seemed like truth. But it is not truth. It is a story. And you are not the story. You are the awareness in which the story appears. Now, let us go deeper. Let us explore what happens when this recognition begins to stabilize, when the glimpses of awareness become more frequent, when the space between thoughts grows wider and the silence becomes more palpable. There's a phase in this awakening that can be disorienting, even frightening. It is a phase where the old structures of identity begin to crumble, but the new way of being has not yet fully established itself. You are no longer who you thought you were, but you do not yet know who you are. The roles you played, the beliefs you held, the goals you pursued, all of it begins to feel hollow, meaningless, like a game you no longer want to play. This is what some traditions call the dark night of the soul. But it is not dark in the sense of evil or wrong. It is dark in the sense of unknown, uncharted, beyond the reach of the mind's familiar maps. The ego is dissolving, and with it, all the structures that gave your life meaning and direction. The career that once seemed so important now feels like a distraction. The relationships that once defined you now feel like roles you are performing. The desires that once drove you now seem empty, incapable of delivering the fulfillment they promised. And in this dissolution, there can be a profound sense of loss, a grief for the life you thought you were living, the person you thought you were. But this loss is necessary. It is the death that precedes rebirth. Not a physical death, but the death of the false self, the constructed identity, the ego. And like all deaths, it is accompanied by resistance, by fear, by the desperate attempt to hold on to what is slipping away. The mind will try to make sense of what is happening. It will create new stories, new explanations, new ways to maintain control. It will say, you are depressed, you are lost, you are having a crisis. And in a way, this is true. But it is not a crisis of your life. It is a crisis of your identity. It is a collapse of the illusion of separation and the emergence of something far more real, far more true, far more alive than anything the ego could construct. So if you find yourself in this place, if you are experiencing the sense of dissolution, this feeling that everything you knew is falling apart, know that you are not alone. Know that this is not a sign of failure or weakness or mental illness. It is a sign of awakening. It is the ego's last stand, its final attempt to maintain control by creating fear and doubt and confusion. But beneath the fear, beneath the doubt, beneath the confusion, there is a stillness. There is a presence. There is an awareness that is not touched by any of this, that is simply watching it all unfold with a kind of compassionate neutrality. Can you find that awareness right now? Not by thinking about it, but by feeling into it. Let your attention drop beneath the surface of thought, beneath the churning of the mind, into the space where you simply are. Not doing anything, not becoming anything, not trying to figure anything out. Just being. Just here. Just now. There's a quality to this being that is utterly simple, utterly ordinary, and yet utterly profound. It is a quality of existence itself. The fact that you are, that awareness is, that consciousness is. And this fact is not dependent on anything. It does not require the right circumstances or the right state of mind or the right understanding. It is simply here, always here, the ground of all experience. And when you rest in this ground, when you allow yourself to be held by this awareness, something remarkable happens. The anxiety does not necessarily go away. The thoughts do not necessarily stop. The challenges of your life do not necessarily resolve. But there is a shift in the quality of your experience. There is a spaciousness, a lightness, a sense that you are no longer carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Because you realize that you are not the one who has to fix everything, control everything, figure everything out. You are simply the space in which everything is happening. And that space is vast enough to hold it all. The joy and the sorrow, the clarity and confusion, the peace and the chaos. This is the gift of awakening. Not a life free from problems, but a life free from the belief that problems are a threat to who you are. Not a mind free from thoughts, but a recognition that you are not your thoughts. Not a world free from suffering, but a heart that can hold suffering with compassion and grace. This is what it means to live from presence, to live from awareness, to live from the truth of what you are rather than from the illusion of what you think you are. And as this recognition deepens, as you spend more time resting as awareness rather than as an ego, you begin to notice something else. You begin to notice that this awareness is not personal. It is not yours in the sense of belonging to you as a separate individual. It is universal. It is the same awareness that is looking out through every pair of eyes, listening through every pair of ears, experiencing through every body-mind. The sense of being a separate self, isolated and alone in a world of other separate selves, begins to dissolve, and in its place, there is a recognition of unity, of interconnection, of the fundamental oneness of all existence. This is not a belief or philosophy. It is a direct perception, a lived reality. When you are resting as awareness, there is no sense of inside and outside, no sense of me and other. There is simply experience arising in consciousness, and consciousness recognizing itself in all forms. The tree you see is not separate from you. The person you meet is not separate from you. The sky, the earth, the air you breathe, all of it is arising in the same field of awareness. All of it is an expression of the same consciousness that you are. And from this recognition, a natural love arises, not the love of the ego, which is always conditional, always seeking something in return, always based on the other person meeting your needs or expectations, but a love that is unconditional, that flows freely without reason or purpose, that simply is. This love is not something you generate or cultivate. It is what you are when the barriers of separation fall away. It is a natural state of consciousness when it is not contracted into the illusion of a separate self. This love extends to everything, including yourself, including the parts of yourself that you have judged and rejected and tried to fix, including the anxiety, the fear, the doubt, the confusion. When you are resting as awareness, there is no longer a war between the part of you that wants to be spiritual and the part of you that is struggling. There is simply compassion for the human experience, for the difficulty of being in a body, in a world, in time. There is a tenderness toward the one who is suffering, a recognition that the suffering is not a failure, but a part of the journey, a part of the awakening. So let the anxiety be there. Let the trembling be there. Let the discomfort be there. Not because you are giving up or resigning yourself to suffering, but because you are recognizing that these experiences are not the enemy. They are messengers, pointing you toward the truth of what you are. They are the friction between the old way of being and the new, the resistance of the ego as it dissolves into the vastness of awareness. And when you stop fighting them, when you stop trying to make them go away, when you simply allow them to be as they are, something shifts. The energy that was locked in resistance becomes available for presence. The attention that was absorbed in the content of experience becomes free to rest as the awareness of experience. And in that freedom, there is a joy. Not the joy that depends on circumstances. Not the happiness that comes from getting what you want or avoiding what you don't want, but a joy that is intrinsic to being itself, a joy that is always here, always available, always shining beneath the surface of whatever is happening. This joy is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, subtle, like the warmth of sunlight on your skin, like the gentle rhythm of your breath, like the simple fact of being alive in this moment. Can you feel it? Even now, even in the midst of whatever you are experiencing, there's a quality of aliveness, of presence, of being. It is so simple that the mind overlooks it, so ordinary that it seems insignificant, but it is the most precious thing there is. It is the essence of who you are, the source of all peace and all joy and all love. And it is here, now, always, waiting for you to notice it, to rest in it, to recognize it as your true nature. This recognition is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning. Because once you have tasted this presence, once you have glimpsed the truth of what you are, you cannot go back to the old way of being. You cannot fully believe in the story of the separate self anymore. You cannot take the drama of the ego quite so seriously. And yet, you will still forget. You will still get lost in thought, lost in story, lost in the illusion of separation. This is part of being human. The conditioning is deep. The habits are strong. The pull of the mind is powerful. But each time you forget, you have the opportunity to remember. Each time you get lost, you have the opportunity to find your way back. And the way back is always the same. It is the simple act of noticing, of bringing awareness to your experience, of recognizing that you are not the content of consciousness, but consciousness itself. This is a practice, not a practice that you do for a certain amount of time each day and then set aside, but a practice that infuses every moment of your life, a practice of presence, of awareness, of being here, now, fully alive to whatever's arising. And as this practice deepens, as the recognition becomes more stable, you begin to live from a different place. You begin to respond to life rather than react to it. You begin to see situations more clearly, without the distortion of the ego's fears and desires. You begin to act from a place of wisdom and compassion, rather than from a place of self-protection and control, not because you have become a better person, but because you are no longer identified with a person. You are resting as the awareness that is prior to the person, the consciousness that is expressing to the person, but is not limited by the person. This does not mean that you become passive or detached or indifferent to life. On the contrary, you become more engaged, more present, more alive, because you are no longer holding back, no longer protecting yourself, no longer trying to control the outcome. You are simply here, fully here, meeting each moment with openness and curiosity and acceptance. And from this place, life flows more easily, not because circumstances become easier, but because you're no longer in conflict with circumstances. You are no longer resisting what is, wishing it were different, try and make it conform to your expectations. You are simply dancing with what is, moving with the flow of life, responding to each moment as it arises. And in this dance, there is a grace, a beauty, a sense of rightness that cannot be explained but can be felt. It is a feeling of being aligned with reality, of being in harmony with the way things are, of being at peace with the present moment. This is what it means to live from presence. This is what it means to be awake. But let us return to the anxiety, to the trembling, to the discomfort that brought you here. Because it is important to understand that awakening does not mean the end of all difficult emotions. It does not mean that you will never feel fear or sadness or anger or confusion. These are part of the human experience, part of being in a body, in a world, in time. What changes is not the presence of these emotions, but your relationship to them. When you are identified with the ego, these emotions feel like threats, like problems, like evidence that something's wrong with you or your life. But when you are resting as awareness, these emotions are simply energy moving through the body, sensations arising and passing, waves on the ocean of consciousness. And you can feel them fully, without resistance, without judgment, without the need to make it mean something about who you are. You can allow the fear to be there, the sadness to be there, the anger to be there, and at the same time, you can rest as the awareness that is not afraid, not sad, not angry. This is the paradox of awakening. You are both the human experience and the awareness of the human experience. You are both the wave and the ocean. And when you recognize this, when you can hold both simultaneously, then there's a freedom that is not dependent on the content of your experience. This freedom is what you have been seeking all along. Not freedom from life, but freedom within life. Not escape from the world, but the ability to be fully present in the world without being overwhelmed by it. Not the absence of challenges, but the capacity to meet challenges with equanimity and grace. This is the promise of awakening. Not a perfect life, but a life lived from the truth of what you are, from the depth of presence, from the vastness of awareness. And the beautiful thing is that this awakening is not reserved for a special few, for the saints and sages and spiritual masters. It is available to everyone, because it is what everyone already is. You do not need to earn it or deserve it or become worthy of it. You only need to recognize it, to see through the illusion of separation, to remember the awareness that has been here all along, quietly witnessing the drama of your life, patiently waiting for you to notice it. So, how do you live from this recognition? How do you bring this awareness into practical reality of your daily life, with its demands and responsibilities and challenges? This is where the teaching becomes lived, where the insight becomes embodied, where the recognition becomes a way of being. And it begins with the simplest of practices, the practice of presence, the practice of being here, now, fully attentive to whatever is arising in this moment. This sounds easy, but it is perhaps the most difficult thing in the world, because the mind is constantly pulling you away from the present moment, into the past or the future, into memory or imagination, into story or analysis. The mind is always somewhere else, always seeking, always becoming, always trying to get to the next moment when things will be better, when you'll be better, when life will finally be the way you want to be. But the present moment is all there is. The past is a memory arising now. The future is a thought arising now. Everything is happening now. And when you are fully present in now, when you are not lost in thought about what was or what will be, then there's a richness, a depth, a fullness to experience that is otherwise missed. The taste of your food becomes more vivid. The sound of a bird singing becomes more beautiful. The feeling of the air on your skin becomes more alive. Everything becomes more real, more immediate, more precious. And this presence is not something you have to create or maintain through effort. It is what naturally arises when you stop doing, when you stop trying, when you stop seeking. It is the natural state of consciousness when it is not contracted into the story of a separate self. So the practice is not about adding something, but about subtracting, about letting go, about releasing the grip of the mind, and allow yourself to simply be. You can practice this right now. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, you can bring your attention to the present moment. Feel the weight of your body. Feel the rhythm of your breath. Notice the sounds around you. Notice the sensations in your body. Notice the thoughts moving through your mind. And as you notice, recognize that you are the one who is noticing. You are the awareness in which all of this is arising. You are not the body, not the breath, not the sounds, not the sensations, not the thoughts. You are the space in which all of this appears. And in that space there is peace. Not the peace that comes from having everything under control, but the peace that comes from surrendering control, from accepting what is, from trusting the flow of life. This peace is always available, always here, always waiting for you to drop into it. But the mind resists this peace because the mind believes that if you stop trying to control things, if you stop worrying and planning and strategizing, then everything will fall apart. The mind believes that your vigilance is what keeps you safe, that your effort is what makes things happen, that your control is what holds your life together. But this is an illusion. The truth is that life is happening on its own, with or without your control. The sun rises and sets without your permission. Your heart beats without your instruction. The seasons change without your intervention. And in the same way, your life unfolds according to a deeper intelligence, a deeper order, a deeper wisdom than the mind can comprehend. When you surrender to this intelligence, when you trust this order, when you align with this wisdom, then life becomes easier, not because circumstances change, but because you're no longer fighting against the current. You're flowing with it, moving with it, dancing with it. And in this flow, there's a sense of rightness, of being exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, even when the mind does not understand why. This is what it means to live from presence, to live from awareness, to live from trust rather than from fear. It is a radical shift in the way you relate to life, a shift from trying to control life to allowing life to move through you, to express through you, to live you. And this shift does not happen all at once. It is a gradual process, a deepening recognition, a continuous letting go. There will be moments when you are fully present, fully awake, fully alive. And there will be moments when you are lost in thought, lost in story, lost in the drama of the ego. This is natural. This is part of the process. The key is not to judge yourself when you forget, not to make it mean that you are failing or doing it wrong. The key is simply to notice when you have forgotten, and in that noticing, to remember, to come back to presence, to return to awareness, to rest as the consciousness that you are. And each time you return, it becomes easier. Each time you remember, the recognition becomes more stable. Each time you rest as awareness, the identification with the ego loosens. It is like a muscle that grows stronger with use, except that it is not really a muscle, and it is not really growing. It is more like a veil that is gradually lifting, revealing what has always been there but was hidden by the density of thought, by the noise of the mind, by the story of the separate self. And as the veil lifts, as the recognition deepens, you begin to see the world differently. You begin to see that everything is consciousness, that everything is awareness expressing itself in infinite forms. The tree is consciousness. The rock is consciousness. The person you meet on the street is consciousness. And you are consciousness, recognizing itself in all of these forms. This is not a philosophical idea. It is a direct perception, a lived reality. And when you see it, when you feel it, when you know it in your bones, then the sense of separation dissolves completely. There is no longer a you in a world. There is only consciousness, only awareness, only the one life expressing itself through infinite forms. And in this recognition, there is a profound peace, a profound joy, a profound love, because you realize that you are not alone, that you have never been alone, that aloneness is impossible when there is only one consciousness, one awareness, one life. You are that consciousness. You are that awareness. You are that life. And so is everything else. There is no separation, no division, no boundary between self and other. There is only the seamless unity of existence, the infinite field of consciousness in which all experience arises and dissolves. This is the ultimate recognition, the final insight, the deepest truth, and yet it is also the simplest, the most obvious, the most immediate. It is what you are right now in this moment, not what you'll become, not what you could be, but what you already are and have always been. The presence, the awareness, the consciousness that is reading these words or hearing these words or simply being here, alive, aware. This is it. This is the awakening. This is the truth. And it is so close, so intimate, so immediate that the mind cannot grasp it. The mind can only step aside and allow it to reveal itself. So let us rest here for a moment. Let us pause in the flow of words and concepts and ideas. Let us simply be, without trying to understand, without trying to figure out, without trying to get somewhere or become something. Just this, just now, just the simple fact of being, of awareness, of presence. Can you feel it? Not as a thought, but as a living reality. There's a stillness here, isn't there? A silence that is not empty, but full. A peace that is not the absence of something, but the presence of everything. This is what you are. This is what has been here all along. Beneath the noise, beneath the story, beneath the anxiety and the seeking and the struggle. This is the ground of your being, the source of your existence, the truth of what you are. And it is not something you have to achieve or attain or become worthy of. It is what you are right now, in this moment, always and forever. And from this ground, from this source, from this truth, you can live your life. Not as a separate self trying to survive and succeed and be recognized, but as consciousness itself, expressing through this particular form, this particular body-mind, this particular constellation of thoughts and feelings and sensations. You can meet each moment with openness and curiosity and acceptance. You can respond to each situation with wisdom and compassion and grace. You can allow life to flow through you, to move through you, to live you. And in this allowing, there is a freedom that is beyond anything the ego could imagine. A freedom that is not dependent on circumstances, not conditional on anything outside of yourself. A freedom that is intrinsic to your nature, to the awareness that you are. This freedom is what you've been seeking all along. Not freedom from life, but freedom to be fully alive, fully present, fully here. Not escape from the world, but the ability to be in the world without being of it. To participate fully in the dance of life without losing yourself in the drama. This is the invitation. Not to become someone else, not to fix yourself, not to transcend your humanity, but to recognize what you already are, to see through the illusion of separation, to remember the awareness that has been here all along. And this recognition is not a one-time event. It is a continuous unfolding, a deepening journey, a lifelong exploration of what it means to be conscious, to be aware, to be alive. There will be challenges along the way. There will be moments of doubt and confusion and fear. There will be times when the old patterns reassert themselves, when the ego tries to reclaim its territory, when the mind pulls you back into the story of the separate self. This is natural. This is part of the process. The conditioning is deep. The habits are strong. The pull of identification is powerful. But each time you notice, each time you recognize that you've been lost in thought, you are awakening. Each time you return to presence, you are strengthening the recognition. Each time you rest as awareness, you are dissolving the illusion. And gradually, over time, the recognition becomes more stable. The presence becomes more consistent. The awareness becomes more obvious. Not because you have achieved something or become someone, but because you have seen through the illusion, because you have recognized the truth, because you have remembered what you are. And this remembering changes everything. Not in a dramatic, sudden way, but in a subtle, gradual way. The quality of your experience shifts. The way you relate to life transforms. The sense of who you are expands beyond the boundaries of the separate self. And you begin to live from a different place, a deeper place, a truer place. You begin to live from presence, from awareness, from consciousness itself. And in this living, there is a peace that passes understanding, a joy that needs no reason, a love that knows no bounds. This is the gift of awakening. This is the promise of presence. This is the truth of what you are. Now, let's explore what this means in the context of your daily life, in the midst of your relationships and your work and your responsibilities. Because awakening is not about withdrawing from the world, not about escaping into some transcendent realm where nothing matters and everything is bliss. Awakening is about being fully present in the world, fully engaged with life, fully alive to whatever is arising, but from a different place, from a different perspective, from a different understanding of who you are. When you are living from the ego, from the separate self, then your relationships are based on need. You need the other person to make you feel complete, to validate your existence, to fill the emptiness inside. And when they fail to do this, when they disappoint you or hurt you or leave you, then there is suffering, because you have made your happiness dependent on something outside of yourself, on something you cannot control. But when you are living from presence, from awareness, then your relationships are based on love, not the needy love of the ego, but the unconditional love of consciousness recognizing itself in another form. You no longer need the other person to complete you, because you are already complete. You no longer need them to validate you, because you know who you are beyond any validation. You no longer need them to fill your emptiness, because you have discovered the fullness that is your true nature. And from this place of wholeness, of completeness, of fullness, you can meet the other person without agenda, without expectation, without the need for them to be anything other than what they are. You can love them freely, without attachment, without possessiveness, without the fear of loss. And this love is transformative, not because it changes the other person, but because it changes the quality of the relationship. There is a spaciousness, an openness, a freedom that was not there before. You are no longer trying to control the other person, to make them conform to your expectations, to get them to meet your needs. You are simply present with them, meeting them where they are, accepting them as they are, loving them for who they are. And in this acceptance, in this love, there is a healing, a deepening, a connection that goes beyond the surface level personality and role and story. The same is true for your work, for your creative expression, for whatever you do in the world. When you are living from the ego, your work is about achievement, about success, about proving yourself, about getting recognition and validation and reward. And there is nothing wrong with achievement or success or recognition. But when these become the primary motivation, when your sense of worth is tied to your accomplishments, then you are setting yourself up for suffering, because achievement is never enough. Success is never final. Recognition is never lasting. There is always the next goal, the next milestone, the next level to reach. And you are caught in a cycle of striving and achieving and striving again, never quite arriving, never quite satisfied, never quite at peace. But when you are living from presence, from awareness, your work becomes an expression of who you are rather than a means to become someone. You are no longer working to prove yourself or to achieve some future state of success. You are simply expressing the creativity, the intelligence, the love that flows through you when you are aligned with your true nature. And this expression is its own reward. It does not need external validation or recognition or success to be meaningful. It is meaningful in itself because it is an expression of consciousness, of awareness, of the one life that is living through you. And paradoxically, when you're no longer attached to the outcome, when you're no longer working from a place of need or fear or lack, then your work often becomes more successful, more impactful, more fulfilling, because you are no longer in your own way. You are no longer blocking the flow of creativity with your doubts and your fears and your need to control. You are simply allowing the work to happen through you, to express through you, to manifest through you. And there is a quality to this work, a depth and authenticity that cannot be manufactured by the ego. This is true for everything you do. When you are living from presence, from awareness, then every action becomes a meditation. Every moment becomes an opportunity to express your true nature. Every interaction becomes a chance to bring consciousness into the world. You are no longer dividing your life into spiritual time and worldly time, into sacred activities and mundane activities. Everything becomes sacred. Everything becomes an expression of the divine. Everything becomes an opportunity to be fully present, fully alive, fully awake. And this is where the teaching becomes practical, where the insight becomes lived, where the recognition becomes embodied. Because awakening is not about having profound experiences or mystical visions or transcendent states. It is about bringing presence into the ordinary moments of your life. It is about being fully here when you are washing the dishes, when you are walking to your car, when you are talking to a friend, when you are sitting in traffic. It is about finding the sacred in the mundane, the infinite in the finite, the eternal in the temporal. And this is possible because the sacred is not somewhere else. The infinite is not in some other realm. The eternal is not in some future time. It is here, now, in this moment, in this experience, in this breath. When you are fully present to what is, when you are not lost in thought about what was or what will be, then you touch the timeless dimension of existence. You touch the eternal now, the infinite present, the sacred ground of being. And in that touch, there's a transformation, a shift, a recognition that changes everything. But this recognition must be renewed again and again, moment by moment, because the mind is constantly pulling you away from the present, constantly seducing you back into the story, constantly trying to maintain the illusion of the separate self. This is its function. This is what it does. And there is no point in fighting it or trying to stop it. The key is simply to notice when it happens, to recognize when you've been pulled away, and to gently return to presence, to awareness, to the here and now. And the more you practice this return, the more natural it becomes. The more you rest as awareness, the more obvious it becomes that this is what you are. The more you live from presence, the more you realize that this is the only way to live, the only way to be truly alive, truly free, truly at peace. Not because you have achieved some special state or attained some spiritual goal, but because you have simply stopped believing in the illusion of separation, stopped identifying with the story of the separate self, stopped resisting what is. And in this stopping, in this ceasing of resistance, there is a profound relaxation. The tension that you have been carrying, perhaps for your entire life, begins to release. The armor that you have built around your heart begins to soften. The walls that you have erected between yourself and the world begin to dissolve. And you find yourself more open, more vulnerable, more alive than you have ever been. Not vulnerable in the sense of weak or defenseless, but vulnerable in the sense of open, receptive, available to life in all its fullness. This openness is not something you create. It is what naturally arises when you stop defending, when you stop protecting, when you stop trying control. It is a natural state of consciousness when it is not contracted into the fear-based patterns of the ego. And in this openness, there is a beauty, a grace, a tenderness that is deeply moving. You begin to see the world with fresh eyes, as if for the first time. The colors are more vivid. The sounds are more clear. The sensations are more alive. Everything becomes more real, more immediate, more precious. And you begin to appreciate the simple things, the ordinary moments, the everyday experiences that you used to overlook in your rush to get somewhere, to become someone, to achieve something. You begin to find joy in the warmth of the sun on your face, in the taste of water when you are thirsty, in the feeling of your feet on the ground as you walk. You begin to realize that happiness is not something you have to pursue or achieve or earn. It is already here, already available, already present in the simple fact of being alive, of being aware, of being here. This is the shift that awakening brings. Not a change in circumstances, but a change in perception. Not a different life, but a different way of living. Not a new you, but a recognition of what you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning and story and identification. And this recognition is liberating, not because it frees you from life, but because it frees you to live, to be fully present, to engage fully with whatever is arising without the burden of the separate self, without the weight of the past, without the anxiety about the future. You are simply here, now, fully alive to this moment, and this moment is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything, because in this moment, all of life is present. The entire universe is here, in this breath, in this sensation, in this awareness. You do not need to go anywhere, or become anything, or achieve anything to be complete. You are already complete. You are already whole. You are already that which you seek. And yet, the seeking continues. Even after the recognition, even after the awakening, there is still a tendency for the mind to create new forms of seeking, new ways to maintain the illusion of incompleteness. It says, yes, I have had this insight, but now I need to deepen it, to stabilize it, to make it permanent. And so the seeking continues, just in a more subtle form. The ego adapts, becomes a spiritual ego, an enlightened ego, an ego that is seeking to be free from ego. But this is still seeking. This is still the movement away from what is the belief that something is missing, the feeling that you are not yet there, and as long as there is seeking, there is suffering. Because seeking implies that what you are looking for is not here, not now, not already present. It implies that you are incomplete, that you need something more, that you have to become something other than what you are. The end of seeking is not the achievement of some final state. It is a recognition that there is nowhere to go, nothing to become, nothing to achieve. It is a realization that you are already that which you seek, that you have always been that which you seek, that seeking itself is the only thing that keeps you from recognizing what you already are. And when this is seen, when this is truly understood, not as a concept but as a lived reality, then the seeking stops. Not because you have found what you were looking for, but because you realize that what you were looking for was never lost. And in the stopping of seeking, there is a profound peace. Not the peace that comes from getting what you want, but the peace that comes from no longer wanting, from no longer needing, from no longer seeking. This peace is not passive or resigned. It is alive, dynamic, full of energy and creativity and love. But it is not driven by lack or fear or the need to become. It is simply the natural expression of consciousness when it is not contracted into the story of the separate self. From this peace, you can still have goals and desires and preferences. You can still work and create and contribute. But there is no longer the desperate quality to it. The sense that your happiness depends on achieving these goals, on fulfilling these desires, on satisfying these preferences. You are already at peace. You are already complete. You are already home. And whatever you do, whatever you create, whatever you contribute, it comes from this place of wholeness rather than from a place of lack. This is the difference between doing and being. When you are identified with the ego, you are always doing, always becoming, always trying to get somewhere. But when you are resting as awareness, you are simply being. And from this being, doing arises naturally, effortlessly, without the strain and stress and struggle that characterizes ego-driven action. You are not doing to become. You are doing as an expression of being. And there's a quality to this doing, a flow, an ease, a grace that is unmistakable. People can feel it when they are around you. They can sense the presence, the peace, the lack of agenda. And this presence is healing. Not because you're trying to heal anyone, not because you're doing anything special, but simply because presence itself is healing. When someone is met with true presence, with unconditional acceptance, with a space to be exactly as they are, something in them relaxes, the defenses soften, the masks drop, and they remember, if only for a moment, their own true nature, their own awareness, their own presence. This is how awakening spreads, not through teaching or preaching or convincing, but through presence, through being, through the simple act of living from awareness. You become a reminder, a mirror, a reflection of what is possible, of what is true, of what everyone already is but has forgotten. And this is the greatest gift you can give, not because you are special or enlightened or better than anyone else, but because you have simply stopped believing in the illusion of separation, stopped identifying with the story of the separate self, stopped resisting what is. And in this stopping, you become transparent. The ego, with all its defenses and strategies and agendas, becomes less solid, less convincing, less real. And what shines through is the light of consciousness itself, the awareness that is your true nature, the presence that is always here, always now, always available. This light does not belong to you. It is not personal. It is the same light that shines through every being, every form, every expression of consciousness. But when the ego is no longer blocking it, when the story is no longer obscuring it, when the identification is no longer limiting it, then it shines more brightly, more clearly, more obviously. And this is what people respond to. Not your personality, not your achievements, not your story, but the presence that shines through when the ego is not in the way. This presence is what you are. It is what everyone is. And when it is recognized, when it is lived, when it is embodied, then life becomes a celebration, a dance, a joyful expression of the one consciousness that is living through all forms, experiencing through all beings, loving through all hearts. This is the vision of awakening, not a personal achievement, not an individual attainment, but a collective recognition, a shared remembering, a universal awakening to the truth of what we are. And it begins with you. It begins with the recognition that you are not the separate self, not the story, not the ego. It begins with the awareness that you are consciousness itself, expressing through this particular form, this particular body-mind, this particular life. And as this recognition deepens, as this awareness stabilizes, as this presence becomes more consistent, you become a beacon, a light, a reminder for others who are also waking up, who are also recognizing their true nature, who are also remembering what they have always been. So let us return once more to where we began, to the trembling, to the anxiety, to the sense that something is not quite right. Can you see it now in a different light? Can you recognize it as a stirring of awakening, the dissolution of the ego, the emergence of consciousness recognizing itself? Can you feel the invitation in the discomfort, the opportunity in the challenge, the gift in the struggle? You are not broken. You are not failing. You are not doing it wrong. You are waking up. And waking up is not always comfortable. It is not always easy. It is not always what the mind expects or wants. But it is the most important thing that can happen in a human life. Because it is the end of suffering, not through escape or avoidance or denial, but through recognition, through awareness, through the direct seeing of what is true. And what is true is this: you are not the anxiety. You are not the fear. You are not the doubt or the confusion or the struggle. You are the awareness in which all of this arises. You are the space in which all experience appears. You are the consciousness that is witnessing it all, holding it all, allowing it all to be as it is. And this consciousness is not affected by what it witnesses. It is not diminished by the challenges. It is not threatened by the changes. It is simply here, always present, always aware. This is your true nature. This is what you are. And the recognition of this is awakening. Not a future event, not a distant goal, but present reality, available right now, in this moment, in this breath, in this awareness. You do not have to wait. You do not have to prepare. You do not have to become worthy. You only have to see, to recognize, to remember what you have always been but have forgotten the dream of separation, in the story of the separate self, in the illusion of being someone who is here, in this body, trying to survive and succeed and be okay. You're already okay. You are already complete. You are already that which you seek. And the seeking itself is the only thing that keeps you from recognizing this. So let the seeking fall away. Let the striving cease. Let the effort to become dissolve. And simply be, simply here, simply now, simply aware. In this simplicity, there is everything. In this presence, there is wholeness. In this awareness, there is peace. Not the peace that depends on circumstances, but the peace that is your nature, the peace that is always here, always available, always waiting for you to notice it, to rest in it, to recognize it as what you are. And as you rest in this peace, as you abide in this presence, as you live from this awareness, something remarkable happens. Life continues. Challenges arise. Emotions move through. Thoughts come and go. But you are no longer lost in them. You are no longer identified with them. You are no longer believing that they define who you are, or determine your worth, or threaten your existence. You are simply the space in which they appear, the awareness in which they arise, the consciousness that witnesses it all with compassion and acceptance and love. And from this space, you can respond to life rather than react to it. You can meet each moment with wisdom rather than with fear. You can act from clarity rather than from confusion. You can love without attachment. You can give without expectation. You can be fully engaged with life without being overwhelmed by it, because you are no longer taking it personally. You are no longer making it about you, about your survival, about your success, about your happiness. You are simply here, present aware, allowing life to flow through you, to express through you, to live you. And in this allowing, there is a freedom that is beyond description, a joy that is beyond reason, a love that is beyond measure. This is the gift of awakening. This is the promise of presence. This is the truth of what you are. And now, as we approach the end of these words, let us rest in silence for a moment. Let us allow everything that has been said to settle, to dissolve, to return to the silence from which it came, because the words are not the truth. The words are only pointers, fingers pointing at the moon. And if you have been following the finger, if you have been caught in the concepts and ideas and explanations, then you have missed the moon. The moon is the silence. The moon is the presence. The moon is the awareness that is here, now, always, regardless of what is being said or not said, thought or not thought, experienced or not experienced. So let the words go. Let the concepts dissolve. Let the understanding fade. And simply be, simply here, simply now, simply aware. This is it. This is the teaching. This is the truth. Not in the words, but in the silence. Not in the explanation, but in the experience. Not in the concept, but in the reality. And this reality is not somewhere else. It is not in some other time, or some other place, or some other state. It is here, now, in this moment, in this breath, in this awareness. You are it. You have always been it. You will always be it, because there is nothing else to be. There is only consciousness, only awareness, only presence. And you are that, not you as a person, but you as the awareness in which the person appears. Not you as the story, but you as the space in which the story unfolds. Not you as a separate self, but you as the one consciousness that is expressing through all forms, experiencing through all beings, loving through all hearts. This is the ultimate recognition. This is a final truth. This is the deepest reality. And it is so simple, so obvious, so immediate, that the mind cannot grasp it. The mind can only step aside and allow it to reveal itself. And when it does, when the recognition happens, when the awakening occurs, then everything changes and nothing changes. The world is the same, but you are different. The circumstances are the same, but your relationship to them is transformed. The challenges are the same, but your capacity to meet them is expanded, because you are no longer a small, separate self trying to navigate a threatening world. You are the vastness itself, the infinite space in which the world appears. You are the ocean, not the wave. You are the sky, not the cloud. You are the awareness, not the content. And from this recognition, there is a peace that is unshakable, a joy that is unconditional, a love that is unlimited. This is what you're being invited into, not as a future possibility, but as a present reality, not as something you have to earn or deserve or become worthy of, but as something you already are and have always been. The invitation is simply to recognize it, to see it, to know it, to live it. And this recognition is not difficult. It is the simplest thing in the world. It is simply a matter of noticing what is already here, of becoming aware of the awareness that is already present, of recognizing the consciousness that is already conscious. You are that awareness. You are that consciousness. You are that presence. Right now, in this moment, always and forever. And the recognition of this is the end of seeking, the end of suffering, the end of the illusion of separation. It is the beginning of a new way of being, a new way of living, a new way of relating to life. Not a way that is better or more spiritual or more enlightened, but a way that is more true, more real, more aligned with what you actually are. And as you live from this truth, as you embody this reality, as you express this consciousness, you become a gift to the world. Not because you are special or chosen or superior, but because you are no longer blocking the flow of life, no longer resisting what is, no longer trying to be someone you are not. You are simply being what you are, and what you are is consciousness itself, awareness itself, presence itself. And this is what the world needs. Not more doing, not more achieving, not more striving, but more being, more presence, more awareness. So this is the invitation. This is the call. This is the opportunity that is being offered in every moment, in every breath, in every experience. To wake up, to recognize, to remember, not through effort or struggle or seeking, but through relaxation, through surrender, through the simple act of being present to what is. And in this presence, everything is revealed. The truth of who you are, the nature of reality, the source of peace and joy and love. It is all here. It has always been here. It will always be here. Because here is all there is. Now is all there is. This is all there is. And this is enough. More than enough. It is everything. It is the totality. It is the infinite expressing itself as the finite, the eternal manifesting as a temporal, the absolute appearing as a relative. And you are that. You are the infinite. You are the eternal. You are the absolute. Not as a concept, not as a belief, but as a living reality, as a direct experience, as the truth of what you are. And this truth is liberating, not because it frees you from life, but because it frees you to live, to be fully present, to engage fully with whatever's arising, to love without fear, to give without expectation, to be without becoming. This is the freedom of awakening. This is the peace of presence. This is the joy of being. And it is yours, not because you have earned it or achieved it or become worthy of it, but because it is what you are. It is your nature. It is your essence. It is your truth. And all that is required is to recognize it, to see it, to know it, not with the mind, but with the heart, not through thinking, but through being, not in some future moment, but right now, in this breath, in this awareness, in this presence. So take a breath. Feel the air moving in and out. Notice the sensations in your body. Notice the thoughts in your mind. Notice the awareness that is noticing all of this. And recognize that this awareness is what you are. Not the body, not the thoughts, not the sensations, but the awareness itself. The consciousness that is here, now, always, witnessing everything, holding everything, allowing everything to be as it is. This is you. This is your true nature. This is what you have been seeking all along, and it is here. It has always been here. It will always be here, because it is what you are, and you cannot be anything other than what you are. You can only forget and then remember. You can only get lost and then find your way back. You can only identify with the illusion and then see through it. And each time you see through it, each time you remember, each time you recognize your true nature, you are awakening, not to something new, but to what has always been, not to a different reality, but to the reality that is always here, always now, always present. And in this awakening, there is a peace that passes understanding, a joy that needs no reason, a love that knows no bounds. This is the gift. This is the promise. This is the truth. And it is yours right now, in this moment, in this breath, in this awareness. You are not anxious. You are waking up. And the waking up is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be received, a truth to be recognized, a reality to be lived. So welcome it. Embrace it. Allow it. Let the old structures crumble. Let the false self dissolve. Let the illusion of separation fall away. And rest in what remains. Rest in the awareness. Rest in the presence. Rest in the consciousness that you are. This is home. This is peace. This is truth. This is you. And now, the words fade, but the silence remains. If you felt the stillness within this message, stay. Subscribe. Not to follow, but to remember again and again that presence is always here, waiting beneath every thought. The true teaching is not in the words you just heard, but in the space between them.